Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third in the series, Race and Poverty in the United States. And we are discussing, my name is Rashida Scar. I am the branch manager for the Marin City Library, and I am joined by my partners with SURJ Marin and our panelists for today. I'm going to share a little bit about what we're doing today, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the program. Like I said, my name is Rashida Scar. I'm joined by my compatriots, Lisa Bennett with SURJ Marin, Barbara Kaler, and Chelsea Supowit. And today we are also joined by Marin County Public Defender David Joseph Sutton and Ida Times Green. They're going to be our panelists for today. That's just a quick introduction. And Ida Times Green is working on creating a hub of social services support for Southern Marin. And we're going to give her an opportunity to share more about that project. This partnership was built in collaboration in order to create a forum to educate and to share information with the people of Marin about social issues that are affecting our county. And we're very excited to have you here today. If you have questions, I want to encourage you to pop them into the chat at any time. We will have time at the end of our program to answer questions. So as they occur to you, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will respond to them at the end. And so without further ado, I would like to welcome you and mention that we have a book list for this series. If you go to the Marin County website, I'll add that to the chat at the end of the program so that you can check out some reading material that really talks about in depth these topics that we're going to be addressing today. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's going to share our land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Rashida. A land acknowledgement is something we do at SURJ before our big meetings to sort of ground ourselves in the history, the ancestry, and the respect for those who've come before us here in this place we are. So you just settle in, close your eyes if you need to or want to. You don't have to. Let's take this moment to enter this meeting without the distractions of the day so that we can work together today as people grounded first in the earth, first in the land. Feel yourself on the land, on the earth. Breathe deeply. Exhale, let go. Be here. The land we are on has become a commodity. It has become something the first people could not now recognize. And by our being consciously or unconsciously on this land, which is unrecognizable to its own people, we are unrecognizable to ourselves. This unrecognizable land has owners and money and deeds and titles, all which further separates us from ourselves, from our community, from our own humanity. We bear the sins of capitalism, which is based on land ownership and money and deeds and titles. We bear the many sins committed against people who dared demand a fair share, dared demand self-determination on the land on which they were placed. This land was plundered, renamed, and stolen from the first people, from the people who spoke the Miwok language, from the people who had many tribes here, who suffered at the hands of the colonizers. So ground yourself in the ground, in the rich compost that makes up our human existence, and ask for the blessings of the first people so that you may walk the road of righteousness, so that you may end the colonization of this land and of your own mind, and ask that you may now walk the earth in reverence. And I would like to highlight an event coming up on Indigenous Peoples Day, hosted by the Coast Miwok people and Sausalito at Dunphy Park on October 8th, and this will be in the follow-up. And it'll be a wonderful way to connect with the first people who lived here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Kaler, who's going to share a little bit more about SURJ Marin. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you, Rashida. My name is Barbara Kaler, and I volunteer with SURJ Marin, and I'm welcoming you and thanking you for coming here today. SURJ is the abbreviation for Showing Up for Racial Justice and is a national organization that started in 2009. It's now a network of over 150 groups and individuals around the country that are organizing white people for racial and economic justice. And then SURJ Marin started in the summer of 2017 by a small group of white folks who saw the need to join local communities and leaders of color to work against the racial disparity that's in Marin County. We're a 100% volunteer-led organization, and we partner with communities of Marin that are Marin-based communities led organizations led by people of color. The three currently that we're partnered with are the Marin City Arts and Culture, the Marin County Cooperation Team, and the Multicultural Center of Marin. Major portion of SURJ Marin's fundraising goes to these three partners, and everyone's welcome to join SURJ Marin's for workshops, book discussions, rallies, or other events that are posted on our website or on social media. And you will be, the website will be put into the email that goes out at the end, but it's info@surjmarin.com. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much, Barbara. And on that note, we will be sending an email out after this program that has a link to the recording and a link to all of these events and topics and resources that we are mentioning here. And we'll have a couple of other events that we want to share with you, and we'll do that at the end. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start our first film. We have 3 short films for you today. The first film gives a basic overview of systems that reinforce poverty, which is the topic we're discussing today. And then it will go into depth about 2 different systems that our panelists are well equipped to address. Namely the criminal justice system and the education system, health system, housing system that are present in Marin County that can reinforce poverty for many of our residents. So we will get started with that. We will stop the recording during the videos, but we will restart it when we're ready to begin our discussion. And that video was titled 3.9 million Americans are living in poverty, according to the US Census, but the problem could be far worse. It was produced by CNBC. We're going to be sharing more videos, but I will go ahead and we'll start the next video. And this one is called The Education Gap, the Root of Inequality. And the next video we're going to watch is called The Truth About New York's Predatory Court Fees, because we're wanting to look at the systems that reinforce poverty, such as the education system and the criminal justice system. So we're going to look at both of those topics. So thank you for joining us. So I would like to introduce our panelists for today. We have Ida Times Green, who's the Senior Program Coordinator with the County of Marin, establishing a Southern Marin Social Services Hub. Welcome, Ida, and I'll share a little bit about Ida now. So Ida Times Green is a native of California and a longtime resident of Marin City. In 2008, Ida made a decision to pursue higher education and was conferred a bachelor's degree from Dominican University in California, San Rafael, in humanities in 2010. Subsequently, she applied for a graduate program at University California, East Bay and was conferred a master's degree in social work in 2013. She is currently employed as a senior program coordinator with the County of Marin, establishing a Southern Marin social services hub. Her passion is to civically engage with the community and produce positive change and outcomes for the residents of Marin City and Marin County at large. Our other panelist who is here with us today is David Joseph Sutton. He is the public defender for Marin County, and share a little bit about David. He's family to me. This is my cousin. So it's a huge pleasure to have him with us today. He has dedicated his legal career to indigent defense and social justice. David's legal career began with an internship at the Marin County Public Defender's Office in summer of 2006. Following his graduation, David worked as a deputy public defender in Marin County. He served as a federal public defender for 10 years and as the Los Angeles trial chief at the Federal Public Defender's Office for the Central District of California. David was appointed to serve as the Marin County Public Defender in September 2021. He has experience of multiple aspects of the criminal justice system, and he represents clients in various criminal matters, including misdemeanors, serious felonies with decades-long mandatory minimum prison sentences, white-collar and medical frauds, and cases punishable by the federal death penalty. So welcome to both Ida and David. Thank you for being here. So I would like to start by, just throwing out our first question, and this is really, I'm going to ask you first, Ida, and then I will pose the same question to you, David. Ida, can you share with us how you got involved with the work you're currently doing with Marin?
Well, thank you, Rashida and SURJ Marin, for inviting me to be in this space on today. I appreciate it. Your topic today is really rich. And so how did I get involved in the work that I am doing now? As you alluded to earlier, I am a longtime resident of Marin County, have lived in Marin City most of my life. And so very familiar with a lot of challenges, inequities, and struggles that people of color have. And so as a child, I was always interested in helping other people. And I volunteered at our local preschool when I was like 12, 13. And so I like to believe that I have a spirit of service. My DNA is set up to serve others. And so it's one of the reasons why I pursued work that deals with helping other people. I've done it for most of my adult life. And I'm a little eclectic, quite frankly, because, I've worked in wholesale manufacturing for many years before I decided that I was going to go back and acquire my degree in social work. And that's exactly what I've done. And I've been fortunate to land my feet in the County of Marin and helping to do what is just inspiring for me, and that is to help others. And I'm able to do that through developing and establishing a social services hub in Southern Marin, serving all of Southern Marin, everything south of Corte Madera to here, Marin City, Sausalito. So that in a nutshell is kind of how I got into this space. Thank you for that question.
Absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. As a current member of the Marin City community, as the branch manager of the Marin City Library. I'm thrilled to be able to work with you, Ida, both now and in the future. So welcome. And David, I'm going to pose the same question to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get into the work that you're doing now?
Right. Thank you. And like Ida, I want to thank SURJ Marin and everyone and my cousin Rashida Scar for inviting me into this space and having me in your space this afternoon. So, you know, well, Rashida knows this, but I initially went to law school thinking I was going to join a large firm and make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. My family background, my mother suffered from pretty significant mental health disorders. So, you know, every couple of years, she would be involuntarily detained. I would either go to foster care. My sister and I would either go to foster care or the care of, say, an aunt, like Rashida's mother. And I would live with you know, in foster care or with family members, etc. You know, my father, whom I did not know until about 5 years ago, he was system involved. He actually was a client of the Federal Public Defender's Office, the office that I, you know, came to run some 10 years ago, and was not involved in my life whatsoever. So, you know, my background, my life is very similar to that of my clients, right? So initially going to law school was upward mobility, right? You get real sick of being dead broke all the time. You get real sick of living on the fringes and living on the margins. And, you know, during law school and for, you know, any of the audience members who have attended law school, it's rough. You know, and I was sitting in civil procedure and thinking, if I'm going to spend 60 to 80 hours a week, 100 hours a week when you're really busy, right? Fighting. Am I going to be fighting for money? Which I'm not knocking, you know, civil litigators, et cetera. People have wrongs and they want their wrongs righted through the legal system. But am I personally, you know, is that going to fulfill me? Is that going to lead to a life where I feel sustained and feel like I'm giving back to the community? Or am I going to fight for people who look and have the same experience as I do? So I naturally gravitated to public defense. And, you know, as Rashida mentioned, I spent my first summer in this office as an intern. They couldn't really get rid of me, and I became an extern for the rest of my law school career, and then went to Alameda briefly, and then was in the federal defender system for about 12 to 13 years, not 10, before being appointed approximately 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago tomorrow, but officially on October 4th. So really, to answer the question, you know, this is a way of honoring where I come from, who I am, right? You know, as a youth, I was system involved and justice involved. My sister and I were both in the child dependency system in San Francisco. If it, you know, but for mentorship, support of family members, et cetera, I have no doubt that I would be in the position that my clients are in, right? So this is really my way of both not paying it forward, but really paying off a debt, right? And a debt that I will gladly pay off. So I'm very excited, and I'm also very excited. Ms. Green is here. You know, we'll talk more about it, but you know, collaborating and really being advocates and champions and warriors to break down some of these systems. So thank you.
Thanks so much, David. And you know, you make an excellent point that these systems are very much connected. So the cycles of poverty, the criminal justice system, education, these are all very much connected, and they feed into poverty, but they're also almost a feedback loop. So your life story, I think it can illustrate some of how people can get trapped, and really being able to navigate away from that trap is incredibly difficult, and more based on fortune than on you know, force of will. So we're going to be discussing some of that. Thank you so much for sharing that, David. And Ida, I'm going to ask you the next question. David, I will ask you this question as well. Can you briefly touch on what you see as the biggest systemic contributors for poverty for Marin residents? Ida, can you share a little bit about that?
As the biggest contributor, can you hear me?
It does.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. It doesn't have to be just one. I would say, you know, if you have a top three, a top five, yeah, right. Are they all equally? What aspects of systemic poverty do you deal with the most?
Yeah,
That can be just that.
I tell you, it is, yeah. There's not enough hours in the day to really go through the deep depths of it. But income inequality, without a doubt. You know, there are people who are doing the same work that don't get the same amount of pay, right? And so that's one for me. The educational system absolutely is another, because in the video where the gentleman was speaking, that in the classroom it should, and I'm paraphrasing, in the classroom it should be where expectations are the same for everyone, regardless of your ethnicity. And too often that is not the case at all. And then you know, just basic neglect. I know I just see it a lot. I see it a lot throughout this county, in the sense that, you know, that's someone else's problem. It's not my problem. So I respect you know, organizations like SURJ, because you do need to begin to stand up for the those are who are the most vulnerable, the lonely, within our county and our society. You know, too often we will pass by someone and not even give a thought as to what their circumstances may be. And that somebody is that homeless person that is on the streets on 4th Street, or those who were in Sausalito for however long they were until they were not, or the ones who were underneath the 101 freeway pass for too many months. Yes, we were in a pandemic. Yes, you know, people were out on the streets, but do they need to be? At some point, I think little by little by little, things can change, and we can start. Marin can be you know, the county, if we so choose, to evoke that change. Little by little by little, we can do it. I really feel that we should. So those things, income inequality, there is no one truly who can live off of $15 an hour here in Marin. You got 2 or 3 jobs, believe me, you do. So I think we can be a great example. Little by little, we can change.
That was perfect. Thank you so much, Ida. I agree. And I think those themes are probably going to come up as we continue to talk. Income inequality, educational inequality, and the criminal justice system. And with that, I'm going to lob that question towards you, David. Can you touch on as what you see in your line of work as the biggest systemic contributors to poverty for Marin residents, for the clients you serve? What do you see as the driving forces for the continuation of poverty in our county?
Sure, and you know, I apologize, you know, at the beginning to be somewhat repetitive to Ida's comments, but you know, I think first and foremost, access to resources, right? Housing, educational and employment opportunities. You know, to put a finer point on education, I don't know, but the number of school districts in Marin County to me is a little bit shocking and galling, right? I send kids to the Reed School District. I pay into that Reed Educational Foundation. I'm sure others here or listening pay into other educational foundations, right? That supplements and supports, you know, extracurricular activities. But that there is not, say, a centralized school district, or that we're not educating our children across this county, right? This great county, this beautiful county, equally, to me is absolutely insane, and is kind of a silent actor continued segregation, in my opinion, right? That's my own personal opinion. I don't want to make that statement in terms as a county representative, but to me, you know, it has always struck me as odd, right? Is this a way to avoid busing? Is this a way to avoid bringing children in to have access to these foundations, extracurricular activities, et cetera? You look at the areas in which my clients predominantly come from, right? They're largely food deserts, right? In terms of the ability to obtain sustainable nutrition, that, you know, food that's nutritionally sustaining, and, you know, just general resources and infrastructure, right? In certain areas in Southern Marin, every time it rains, there's toxic flooding, right? The sewers literally overflow, right? There's issues with old housing that, you know, it's kind of you know, that all ties into the ability to, you know, if you're not getting the best education, are your kids, you know, able to obtain a higher education, or is it a fight even, you know, greater than the skills necessary for other students to gain a higher education, a degree in higher education, and support their families, right? Or reinvest in their own communities that they're coming from. So it becomes a vicious cycle, right? And it's a self-serving cycle, right? You know, I think I'm probably an outlier when I'm like, you know, maybe we should be inviting kids from other areas into the Reed School District and supplementing their education through our foundation, right? But, you know, I think that's what takes change, leaning in and actually being the advocate, putting your money where your mouth is, not, you know, being a yes in my backyard as opposed to a NIMBY, if that makes sense. You know, I work hard for the income that I earn, but I am more than happy to share that, to ensure that other generations and other individuals have the success that I have, right? Because like I said during my introduction, but for the assistance of others, I would definitely not be here. So.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that is a theme that we see across the board. As I was researching for this program, you know, one sociologist that I was observing was saying, you know, this is 100% this is a lack of will. It's not a lack of resources. We live in one of the richest counties in one of the richest states in the world. You know, it is a lot of times it's a lack of will. You know, I've got mine. I don't feel like paying for anybody else's way, or, you know, my community first. But, you know, there's a lack of recognition that all of our communities are connected. I think COVID highlighted that. You know, the sick homeless person that is in the coffee shop with you can make others sick if don't have access to good health care. That can flow over into our hospitals where you might be getting taken care of. Our kids are sharing the world with each other. If one group is being denied, then everybody is struggling together. So this idea that you're bringing forth, David, is really, I think, central to it. You know, do we have the will to, as you say, put your money where your mouth is? Or do we have the will to share resources so that everybody does better? So that I think that is a perfect statement. I'm going to move on. David, I'm going to ask you this question next. In one of the videos we watched, we saw how the enforcement of fines and fees and the over-policing of communities of color can contribute to racially enforced poverty. How have you seen this in cases that the Marin County Public Defender's Office are addressing?
Well, you know, fortunately in California, and there's still a ton of work that needs to be done, but post, I want to say July 1st, 2023, with the promulgation of Assembly Bill, I believe it was 1869, 23 administrative fees related to courts, right? The operation of the courts. You know, administrative fee if you were being prosecuted, a public defender fee. Literally, you had to pay the county for your own legal representation after the county had, you know, sought to prosecute you in the first instance, right? Like that, you know, that's the trial. That's very Kafkaesque, if you ask me. You know, a lot of those fees have been repealed. Still, some remain in terms of the actual fines and fees as a result of convictions, right? You also look at, and if you know, it's posted online, so I really do, you know, it's a very dense read, but you look at the Judicial Council of California's, I guess, theorem for fines, fees, bails, etc., for traffic violations, and it makes you very upset. I think is probably the most visceral reaction. You know, there's say a base fine, so you get a traffic ticket. The base fine is $35. That is then doubled, and then you also have to pay a fee to go to traffic school. There's a traffic school monitoring fee that's paid to the court, which I've had a traffic ticket. I assume everyone in this Zoom has had a traffic ticket. No one's monitoring that school. You just find a school, you click on it, and then you pay your $600 or $700, right? If you were living on the margins, let's say you're living, your monthly income is $3,000, right? 1,800 of that goes to rent. You have to feed your children, you have gas, you have insurance, you have healthcare if your employer is not providing you with healthcare or some other subsidies. That $800 to $900, $1,000 to even enroll in traffic school is it's ruinous, right? That can ruin you, literally ruin you, and you likely do not have 2 to 3 to 4 months of savings to be able to pay that. If you don't attend traffic school, you get a point on your license, or your license gets suspended, right? But you still have to take your kids to school. You still have to, in Marin, you're going to have to drive, right? Because public transportation is not what it is, say, the East Bay or in the city. So if you are pulled over, you get another ticket, but this time you're being criminally prosecuted for driving on a suspended license or driving without a license, right? So then you have to come see me. You're taking more time off to go to court, to attend these court hearings. There's likely going to be a conviction, additional fees. You're on summary probation for a year, additional fees, and it does not stop, right? It does not. Well, you did the crime. You did, you know, this is the over policing, overburdening, and really just almost indentured servitude of the poor, right? To fund these systems used to inflict, I'd say, economic harm in the first instance. So sorry, I've gotten a little off topic. You draw me back to the original question.
Not at all. I feel like you're touching on some of that web of systemic systems that are contributing to this this cycle of poverty. There was a fantastic segment that Last Week Tonight with John Oliver did. I'm not going to say it on here, but I do recommend you check it out. They actually have a whole playlist of videos that talk about some of this cycle of indentured servitude, debtors' prisons. If you can't pay, you have to stay, right? Bail, all of those are connected to if you punishing those who don't have money. Right? If you're, you know, you're guilty, you're literally serving time until proven innocent. So like the systems of justice is now subverted. The standard that we hold the American justice system to, innocent until proven guilty, is not the case when you have a bail system. When you have fines and fees being levied against everyday Americans, if you're needing to drive to get to work so you can pay these fines and fees, and you have a suspended license because you couldn't pay your fines and fees, like that is just a crazy vicious cycle. It's like, how do you get out of that? It's absolutely insane. I will add the link to that playlist for those of you who want to watch it. It is spicy. It's for adults. It's for adults. It's not for children. But that segment where they go through the bail system and the municipal fines, I highly recommend checking that out, because it really does put a spotlight on some of those inequities. Thank you so much, David, for that. For Ida, I have this question for you. So you have a background in social work. I know you have a background in the education system. I know you've been working with the Sausalito Marin School District and have been very active in the Marin City community to fight injustice. I would love to hear can you share how you saw some of these systems impacting the kids you serve, the adults you serve, the residents who live in these, as you say, neglected communities? I would say disinvested. There's actively disinvesting happening in some of the poorest communities in Marin. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a loaded question because it's just like an octagon, right? So many angles to it. But I would like to say that the Sausalito Marin City School District was the first in over 50 years that was levied a suit for operating a desegregated school. And so it a complete full circle, because as a child, I was bused to our school in Sausalito. And so I was a product back when Hector was a puppy of desegregating a school system. And by the way, David, I believe there are 14, maybe 17 districts in this county. And without uncertainty, the Sausalito Marin City School District, we're making up some ground, but we failed generations of kids over too many years, quite frankly. That's why that lawsuit came. That's why the lawsuit came and said, listen, you're running a segregated school, because we had a public school and we had a public charter, and kids were being siphoned, because it's like at the public charter, they had more offerings. They, ballooned the student body. So go from maybe 70 kids to 300 plus kids, where the district went from maybe 150 kids down to 105 or 90, whatever the case may be. No one wants to sit in a three-legged chair. It won't balance. And so, the balance was off. And so in many ways, many ways, our kids, our families, they suffered from that. A lot of families that are part of the public school system are single parents. So we have a lot of single parents who are sending their kids to school, and they don't have the time in or bandwidth to do the tutorial that needs to happen, because they're too busy trying to work and make sure that, on that mediocre salary that they're getting, that they can provide for their children. So I've seen the systemic ravelings, if you will, in real time. Is one of the reasons why I was committed to stepping up and being within that space. That's just one space, right? That is one. I have seen over my lifetime the generation when there was a drug epidemic within our community, and now we're coming back. We're circling back on some of those horrific things that are entering in our community, where grandparents and great grandparents were taking care of kids, taking care of their grandkids and their great grandchildren, because the parents couldn't do it. The parents, whatever it was that they were doing with themselves, they were not caring for their naturally born children. And then when you even remotely look at housing, we have a couple who's here in our community that I believe a lawsuit was settled for them, because they had an appraiser who lowballed them over $500,000 of what the actual value of their home is, right? And then if folks on this call, if you have any remote idea as to what Marin City is, or so we have public housing here, right? And so public housing over 60 plus years, a lot of deferred maintenance. There are folks who are living in public housing that are having to deal with rodent infestation, mold, and things of the like. And so now they're talking about, you know, upgrading and renovating the housing. But why are we waiting now? That should have been something that has happened long ago. And when you look at this little bowl that I live in, homes that sold for $18,000, $20,000 back in the 60s are now 1.2 million. There's very, very few people who look like me who can afford to live where we were raised. And I can literally tell you how many folks who live in homes that I know. We can go street by street. I can tell you how many people still live in those homes. So yes, Rashida, so many, you know, inequities, if you will. And in many ways, as David alluded to, it would be great if the offerings were the same throughout Marin County for our children, because it will be a cycle that we'll never be able to get out of if we don't change it.
And I think that's the equity piece is, you know, if we're treating the county as a whole instead of as these really red line segments, and you know, we've if those of you who are familiar with this series of programs, we do talk about the redlining and the segregation. You can name the pockets of Marin where you can just count on there being disinvestment and neglect. And Marin City is one of those pockets that historically has been neglected because Black and brown residents have been said, this is where you can live. You cannot live anywhere else for decades. And home ownership was out the window. Public housing was available, and that's about it. Those who were able to make it into homes, it's like, you know, that example you mentioned, Ida, where those Black and brown residents who have been able to get into homes, their homes are devalued, even though across the street in the Sausalito line off of Marin City, they're getting 500,000 more. You know, it's just around the corner. They're getting that much more. So that is, for most Americans, how we build wealth. So that's the wealth that you pass on to your kids and your grandkids. So in the best case scenario, if you're Black or brown, you're passing half of what a white family in a similar house around the corner is able to pass on to their kids. And that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is your family was never able to even get to that point, and you're in public housing that is degrading and falling apart and neglected, as we said, disinvested. And you have nothing to pass on to your kids. That wealth is just not there. And so we see that. I do highly encourage you to check out Marin County Free Library's YouTube channel and go back and look at some of the other programs that we've done with SURJ Marin, because we do address some of those historical inequities that have formed a system of poverty here in Marin. So thank you for sharing that. And I do want to kind of talk about some of those pockets of poverty that we have in Marin, that are really cheek and jowl with pockets of extreme wealth. And I want to talk about that with both of you in a moment. I'm going to ask this question of both of you. David, poor can be defined differently in different areas of Marin County. Can you discuss ways that this happens and what this means for the poorest of the poor? So, you know, we've got, you know, the strata, we've got middle class, lower middle, lower, and then you have like people who are just below the poverty line, at the bottom of the poverty line. Can you explain to us how you see this playing out for each of those kind of strata in the criminal justice system and in other areas?
Sure. I'd actually like to start, probably the community members who are most in need, right? So who are living on the fringes and extreme poverty, right? So probably first and foremost, those who are experiencing homelessness and what that means in Marin County, right? Because you have a very, very wealthy county with a lot of its natural beauty and individuals who don't want to see and don't really want to deal with homelessness, right? Like we can have it underneath a bridge, we can have it near a creek that's off to the side, but it shouldn't be in our driveways, shops, our sidewalks, etc. Right? It could be on an access road, but even that is an issue, right? It can, or you think about individuals who say are undocumented, or you talk about deserts and service deserts, and I do want to shout out Health and Human Services, but think about over the mountain, right? How often do we actually think about what is going on if you're not in West Marin over the mountain? There is a very, very large population of people who are living in extreme poverty and who are working for very wealthy ranchers, right? And working on farms out there, and who largely are just unseen, right? It's not San Rafael, it's not Mill Valley, it's not, say, Tiburon, Sausalito, et cetera, right? Or Nevada. So it's not in your face. So it is largely forgotten. Those people are largely forgotten. And I think that, frankly, is a failure. Inward looking, even at my department, my staff, myself, I have a tendency of going off on tangents, so I apologize, Rashida. And then I'd say largely in terms of the clients that I work with, or our staff works with, it's largely working poor, largely first generation, Latino individuals who are trying to make it, coming from pockets, individuals from pockets of say the Canal, North Marin, sometimes West Marin, Marin City as well, I am going to go off on a tangent, and what that means for criminal prosecution, taking a day off to come to court, finding childcare. You already can't afford childcare in the first instance, right? I think someone, Christina Garcia, mentioned childcare in the chat. So you can't afford meaningful childcare in the first instance. You're working either an hourly job or some sort of job where taking a day off really is going to be a huge financial hit. You're adding the cost of transportation to that. You're adding the cost of finding a friend, family member, or someone in the community to watch your child. You go to court, you meet with your attorney, hopefully I will say they better have gone over the case with you and discussed the case with you, or else I'm going to be upset with my attorneys. But then likely the matters continue, right? So you're going to have to come back in another 60 days. You're going to have to do this all over in another 60 days. We need more time to investigate into your case, right? So what that means for someone who is working poor, right? You have this added expense that is really just insanely detrimental and really could put a family in financial crisis, right, for months on end as a result of a ticket, right, as a result of Marin is largely predominantly a misdemeanor county, meaning that a significant amount of the criminal offenses that are prosecuted here are predominantly misdemeanors and less felonies, say, as opposed to Alameda, Contra Costa, or San Francisco. But even those minor offenses, that has a real lasting financial effect on the working poor, and even the moderately poor or working class, who are making it, have a little bit of savings, but again, that is a huge intrusion into their financial lives, which could throw them into crisis. I'm not sure I actually addressed your question.
Oh, you did. You definitely did. Because I feel like you really touched on a lot of the topics from kind of the hidden poverty on the ranches, and the kind of more the issues that the middle class, I would say the working poor, who those folks who are working 2 or 3 jobs, who are dependent on that money, who are living paycheck to paycheck, and how even a single court date can pose a huge detriment to their family and their well-being. I think that that is very pertinent to, pretty much a lot of people in the lower stratas of financial stability. They're the most impacted by this economic injustice and, um, inequalities in the fines and fees systems as well. So thank you for addressing that. And Ida, I'm gonna ask you the same question. As poor can be defined in a number of ways in Marin County, how do you see this most impacting the people that you're serving as you're setting up this social services hub? How do you prioritize? How do you ensure that both those who are already kind of scraping the bottom of financial security and those who are on the edge and about to tip down into, how do you, build a system that supports all of those people?
Yeah, that is truly a great question. I want to apologize if you guys have been hearing a little ding as I've been talking. My computer is hooked up. So when I get text messages, I'm like, oh my gosh, hold on, turn that off. So apologies for that. And with that said, Rashida, there's a scripture that says that the poor will always be among you. And so how do we take care of the poor? There was a time, even for myself, working paycheck to paycheck was just very difficult. Trying to have 3 to 6 months of a savings in case of an emergency was not attainable. It was not attainable. It's even a struggle now. And while in the community, I had, mentioned to our director of Health and Human Services and my direct supervisor that it would be a good idea for us to go on days that we have food bank here in the community. And on Mondays and Thursdays at 2 different churches, we have food bank here. And I have seen the fluctuation of folks who come for the service, for food, right? From those who I know who live in public housing, from the anchor outs to folks who pull up in BMWs and Mercedes. And you're thinking, why would such a person need to be in a line like this? It's because of the need. It's a need. They too, this illusion. First of all, there's a lot of wealth in Marin County. So there's a lot of wealth. And in that, when you say it's a lot of wealth, people say, oh, this is a rich county. No, there are more people who are below the poverty line, who are working poor, who are struggling, than there are people who have a lot of wealth. And so I've seen a spectrum, quite frankly. And David is very right. For the amount of people who are unhoused, who are in pockets and who, it's like whack-a-mole, they're in one spot and then you move them to a whole nother spot, and then you move them to a whole nother spot. And yes, impoverished people are not invisible. They are amongst us in too many ways. We spend a lot of time shuffling them in areas or making sure that they're not right before us, then we are taking care of them. It seems like an oxymoron that you would have somebody who is poor, who's working class, who's a working poor, and they have some kind of legal, matter that they're dealing with. And let's just say that they have to spend some time in jail. Our dollars are being spent to take care of this person who was in jail. Then, it's like an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So, Rashida, the poor will be among us. How do we take care of them? And what's fair, I think, is the question to be had. And again, I just want to come back to not only Marin, but the state of California really should start migrating and moving towards what a living wage is. $12 is not a living wage. $7.25 federal government, you have to be kidding me. a cup of coffee at Starbucks is more than that. So yeah, I've seen the flux.
And thank you for highlighting the Anchors Out people who live on, who were and have been living on boats in the Sausalito marina. Like you are absolutely correct. One of the things that I was reading about is how expensive it is to roust people out of encampments, off of boats, off the street. How expensive it is to house them in our criminal justice system and jails and in prisons. If we took that money and put them in homes and gave them mental health care and connected them with community, how different would our society look? Why are we spending this money to really punish people for being poor when we can use that money to assist people? That, as you say, it does seem like an oxymoron. It does seem self-defeating. And I think we have a real opportunity in, as you say, the state of California and in Marin to exert that force of will to use those funds differently. So I appreciate that point. I think you stated that beautifully. David, I'm going to actually, talk to you about this, especially in terms of the criminal justice system. If somebody is in the system is in prison, how does poverty grow or increase for them and their families? How do you see them being dinged, even though they're already in the system, maybe already in prison, already in jail? How do you see that developing for their families and for themselves after they get out?
Right. Well, obviously the first and foremost, it's more often than not likely going to be the male, and if we're talking about prison, it's probably a person of color, given the statistics. So you have a parent or you have a family member who is obviously no longer able to contribute in terms of financially being able to go out and work. There's the it's not anecdotal, but the consequences that even flow from it. Right. So let's say you've broken the social contract and you've decided to plead guilty and you were sent to prison for 36 months. Right. There's no question about the actual conduct. But when you come out, that prison sentence, that conviction, it's a scarlet letter, right? It is a form of leprosy in terms of your future employment or your ability to get a job or your ability to obtain a license. And and it's being peeled back somewhat, your ability to obtain education or resources in order to support education, right? So you've committed some acts, conduct, and you've agreed that, I'm going to have a timeout for 36 months, but that's not it, right? That it is this lifelong, and going back to indentured servitude or this kind of, weight that you have to carry with you for the rest of your life that is going to affect you economically for the rest of your life. There are systems and there is legislation in place where you can now seek expungement of a prison sentence off of your record after 2 years of, being out of prison and no additional convictions. But still, until you've done that, and still with even some sophisticated background check in software, that conviction is going to follow you. That conviction is going to affect the way that you're able to earn, even after, you have allegedly paid your debt to society, right? Let's not, I think the larger 10-hour, 12-hour, 3-day conversation is, how did that individual get into the criminal legal system in the first instance, right? If we're talking about all these systems that maybe funnel people towards some of these issues or create these issues in the neighborhood, maybe it's a conveyor belt towards that prison sentence in the first instance. But you come out, and you can't earn, right? You can't support your family. Maybe you walk away from your family, right? So your family is even denied your care, your support, or the financial resources that you may be able to provide, right? And potentially there's recidivism as a result, right? So it is again, we keep talking and going back to these cycles and cycles of poverty, cycles of indentured servitude, systems that are designed to keep people down, right? It's you hear kind of at the end of a news half hour, or this upbeat story about, say, the David Suttons or someone else who's been involved and is able to, air quotes, it was never intended to be an actual statement, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, right? Or the person who has overcome the 1,000,000 to 1 odds and is a huge success, and now they're an inspiration for everyone. I mean, that's not real, right? What we need is real systemic change, right? What we need to do is really start leaning in, and I'd say attacking these systems and really chipping away at these calcified foundations that have led to a really broken system, criminal legal system that we're dealing with now.
Thank you. And I think you're right. You really hit the nail on the head when you're talking about incarceration. It's really a break and a separation from community, from family, those social safety nets that you would depend upon after you've served your debt uh, to society. Those are broken, those are frayed, those are damaged by incarcerations, especially if it's been a long incarceration. And then society itself, the difficulties in getting a job, having the conviction follow you around even though you've served your time, ending up in the justice system, even if you haven't committed the crime, but say you were profiled or you were placed in that system erroneously. I mean, we've seen several instances of that throughout the country. Having absolutely catastrophic effects on the individual and on the families and on the communities, where and you I think you said it beautifully, recidivism. I can't get a job after being through the system. Nobody wants to hire me.
Can I just jump back in real
Yeah,
quick?
please, please.
And you talk about this, right? So in coming from the federal system, when we had a client sign a plea agreement, there was a warning, especially in drug cases, that you or your family members' ability to receive public assistance through federally funded food programs may be reduced as a result of this conviction, right? So literally the ability to eat, right? If you're living on the fringes, if you're dealing drugs because you can't get a job, you are subject to a horrible education system where you were never in a place to actually go out and attain higher education and earn in the first instance. But now you've caught this federal conviction, and now if you're in the house, not only will you won't get the aid, but your family's aid may be reduced as a result of your presence in the house, right? Luckily, CalFresh and I think CalWorks did away with kind of that mandate, I want to say back in 2015, 2016. So, but those systems still exist, right? So you have allegedly paid your debt, you have accepted responsibility, but you cannot eat. I mean, think about that. You cannot eat. So sorry for cutting you off. But
No, I think that that is very that's a huge point. I think in the video about the New York systems of fines and fees, somebody mentioned how it punishes the families of people who have done nothing wrong. The children of these families are punished almost as much as the person who supposedly or allegedly committed the crime. They're suffering, they lose that income of that second parent, they lose that care, that systems of care. You talk about child care. That's another person who could possibly care for them while one family member is working. I think in California a lot of parents have kind of created this hobbled together child care and support systems for themselves because it's not provided universally. But imagine if you are used to being in a two-person household, what happens when one of them is in the system? You know, that is an enormous, you know, Ida, you said a three-legged chair. It's a two-legged chair. How do you do that? You know, people are balancing on two legs here, trying to make that work. And the struggle that is represented with that is incredible. David, thank you for highlighting that. Because if we have this justice system, it doesn't feel just if families are being punished, if the innocent are being punished for, you know, crimes committed by a family member. That is absolutely devastating. And since families are part of communities, it doesn't just devastate the family, it devastates the community as a whole. So that is, yeah, I think that was a great expression of that. Ida, I'm going to bring this to you. Being poor is expensive. How do you see fines, fees, lack of access to public transportation in parts of Marin, costs of housing? Talk about some of those systems and how they're connected to people's ability to live in a way that is not like completely deleterious to their health and well-being here in Marin County.
Absolutely. I think, you know, not having the right and proper access to such things will stranglehold people without a doubt. So if you are a single mother and with two children and you don't have a car, but you need to get to your job that, let's just say, is in San Rafael. And, you know, I haven't taken the bus in a long time, but I imagine it's about $3 or more upward. And you got to do that in both directions for 5 or 6 days a week. I mean, that is just a hardship. And I've seen it, you know, within the community. And that, coupled with having to maintain all those things that involve comfort for a lot of us, really, in life, because you need to have a roof over your head. That is for sure. And you got to have your lights on. And so I have, over, you know, just the past years, have had people reach out and ask for just a gamut of things, Rashida, just a gamut. You know anybody who can help me with my PG&E? You know anyone who can help me with rent? You know anyone that can give me enough money so that I can put gas in my car to go to X, Y, and Z, and on and on and on. And so I think in many ways, you know, when we have systems set up that can help and support people, it alleviates some of the stranglehold that they have to endure, right? So those food pantries that I alluded to, in this small community, there is access to food at least 4 days a week. So on Mondays at one church, on Wednesdays at the school, on Thursdays at another church, on Saturday mornings at another church. And it is not, you know, they don't limit it to just people within this bowl. And I've seen people come for the services, again, from as far as Fairfax. I've seen people come from as far as Fairfax. And then there was a time when they said there are people who are crossing the bridge because they knew what was going on. That's a distance, but it happens, right? And, you know, coupled with that, so if you are really just barely making ends meet, how do you render medical care for yourself and for your family? And so I am very proud of all of those who made the Marin City Health and Wellness Center happen. So we did a ribbon cutting a couple days ago. But I remember the early stages of just trying to get a health center for the poor, very poor, and marginally poor, because I think I'm in that bucket. Get a health center here for years and years and years. And now I was at the ribbon cutting, state of the art. I was speaking with our dentist, and she said that there are about 200 people waiting on a wait list to be served. I can't even imagine the hundreds of people that are needing medical care, and then behavioral health and recovery services, because there's a wait line, right? So again, disparities. If you have the money, you have the income, you can go to the dentist, you can go to the doctor, you can see a therapist. But when you don't, you're going to be in line waiting. So not only for this clinic, Marin Community Clinic, and so forth and so on. And again, I'm just seeing those systems, people being strangled whole because they can't attain what they need to just be comfortable.
Thank you so much for that. David, I'm seeing you, you're wanting to jump in here. Please do.
Yeah, and I think it's very important to shout out Ida and Health and Human Services and the idea of a Southern Marin, service hub, especially for Health and Human Services. The idea of county government, right, local government. First and foremost, our staff, we are on the front lines of tackling these issues, of addressing basic needs for community members, right? That is the mission and the drive of being a government servant, right? To lift these individuals up and to be the true safety net. But and think of, if you think about the county is fighting to change this, but as it exists now, if you live in Canal, if you live in North Marin, if you live in West Marin, if you live in Marin City, you have to see your attorney at the Civic Center, right? Or now we can Zoom. You have to get on a bus. You come here, but you had to take your day off work, like we said before. You have to find childcare.
Right.
You have to fit into the hours of 8 to 4, right? In terms of when the government services are available. But you also have to go to Kerner, right, to address an issue for health and human services. So you're taking a bus to the Civic Center. You have to go back to the Canal to go to Kerner. You have to address all these needs in this kind of spider web system of a county that is spread out, mostly in the county seat in San Rafael. So to have the foresight and the real dedication to think about community hubs, community service hubs, it's truly great work. And so Harold Wallace, the Health and Wellness Center, what Ida's doing down with the Southern Marin Service Hub, this is what we can and should be doing. Even the Public Defender's Office, we're trying, right? And I think the point is to not be performative, right? Because if it's performative, it's just a joke. And I'd argue that it's almost worse than the systems that are holding individuals down. But making sure that public defenders are out in the community doing these clean slate programs, going to Ritter Center, going to St. Vinny's Help Desk, going to Benford Road, right? It is not just a performative act, but really, what we're talking about, leaning in and trying to change the circumstances. So we're actually, providing our services in a meaningful way that's accessible for the working poor, and more importantly, those individuals who are in extreme poverty. So
that is beautifully put. And I do, we're going to open it up for questions and comments from our audience. If you have questions, please put that into the chat. We would love to hear from you. I know Christina left a great comment that I would love to hear our panelists touch on. And we'll start with that comment. But if you have questions or comments for our panelists, please do put those into the chat now. And I do want to, while you're putting that into the chat, I do want to put a plug in. David mentioned the Clean Slate program. I'm going to share my screen so you can see that. We have a Clean Slate program happening right now. It's going to be happening on October 5th, 3:30 to 6 p.m. It's going to be in Novato on 1907 Novato Boulevard. If there are people in the system who or who you work with or approach who need that kind of assistance, do spread the word about this. And we will include this into our lists of resources. We'll include this in a list of links that I'm going to throw into the chat at the end of the program as well. But as we move into our public question and comment time, I do want to just put that out there. And again, I'll throw the link for this into the chat. So first, I want to just address Christina's comment about access to resources, access to affordable childcare specifically. Behind rent or mortgage, the #1 expense for people in California is childcare. You know, what do you do while you got to work? Who's taking care of your kids? That is such a huge thing. Ida, I'm going to throw that towards you. And she also mentions vocational and educational training for people who, you know, were not able to get the equitable education that they needed at the beginning. How do we make sure that they are able to get the training that they need to enter into fields where they can earn a living wage for their family? So Ida, I'm going to throw that your way.
Yeah, you know, in one of the videos where someone was talking about if a person is on, you know, the different social services and they make just a penny more, it'll kick them off of the services that and it just seems so unfair. It's just an unfair system in many ways, right? Because everybody cannot be pulled up by their bootstraps and trying to make a better life for themselves. You know, if it was that simple, it would be great for many people. But with that said, I am so happy that universal childcare for all is going to be coming in our direction. I think that the state of California is going to be you know, pivotal for us to do that. And Superintendent Tony Thurman, who is really pushing this out, you know, it's important because how do you go to work if you have an infant and you can't afford childcare, or if you have a toddler and you can't afford childcare? And so starting kids early is so pivotal to what they can do later in life, right? By age 2, 1.5, 2, kids really need to be able to socialize, integrate, and be the sponges that they are learning. So I'm really kind of proud of a program that's here within the community. It is called the Horizon Community School, and they started it several years ago, and specifically targeting families who would never have an opportunity to send their kids to like the Horizon School in Mill Valley because, you know, there's a fee with that. But they start the kids early. They're 2 years old, and you know, sliding scale for some people, but free for many families. And in many ways, Rashida, those are the doors that need to be open in terms of how we educate our kids in what is provided to our kids. So academic supportive programs like Bridge the Gap or the Hannah Project, who's here within the community, and these are nonprofit organizations, are stepping in the spaces to broaden, increase, and help develop our young folks, our children, so that they do have opportunities down the road there. So programs like that, and there needs to be more. Canal Alliance, or the programs that's happening in the Canal and in Novato, they're pivotal for families who have small children that just need a break.
I think that is so beautifully put, and you highlighted a lot of our Marin County Free Libraries partners as well in that. You know, we are doing our best to kind of create these systems of care, but how much easier would that be if that were, you know, there, like you say, you have that hub of resources that are available to local communities. I think we have a question coming into the chat here, so I'm gonna turn to that really quick because I really do want to give everybody a chance to to share their situation.
Yeah, Rashid, I just want to float up First Five as well.
Yes, First
Okay.
Five, Head Start, all of these programs that are kind of built to, you know, support families, especially. I can say that our library has been impacted. People cannot come to Marin City to work because transportation, childcare, they have trouble with their vehicles, and there's no the SMART train does not go to Marin City. Like that's a decision that was made in halls of government. That's not a bootstraps thing. That's not a force of will thing. Like, how do people get to jobs? How do they get to work? How do they get where they need to go? Having those systems of support built in for families, how can Marin County see those gaps and fix them so that people can take care of their kids? They can get to work so that they can support their families. I think that's such important, you know, points to bring out. I'm going to read from Christina again. I brought that up because I was involved with the testimonies that happened at the Capitol this year to help remove family fees with parent voices. As an Indigenous parent leader in Marin, the family fee structure changed drastically this year. Under 75% of median income no longer have fees, and over that now pay 1% instead of 10% of income. It's getting there. Sorry, I'm just scrolling down here. Give me a second. You know, Zoom is tricky. It's getting there, but there's always more work to be done with equity. That is a beautiful example of the local government being responsive to community voices and actually making those changes, removing some of those barriers, and what an impact that's going to be. I'm looking forward to seeing the impact that's going to have on our local families. Thank you so much for highlighting that, Christina. We've got a few more minutes, and I have one last question to ask. If anybody has a last minute question for David and Ida, please pop that in the chat now. And this is kind of my aspirational vision question for you guys. If you had the resources, or if you had the ability to change something in our current system, if you had unlimited resources, how would you allocate those resources to address and break some of this web of systemic poverty that we've placed on communities of color?
Education, housing, and food. I mean, you know, just
the basics.
Thinking about, you know, if pouring in and making sure people have suitable housing, right, and real, you know, real nutrition, right, the ability to access food, like I said, education, and education that is equal to you know, that we're, you know, I live in Tiburon, say, you know, in the Reed School districts and in other areas of the county, right, and I say, you know, education, nutrition, etc., or housing and nutrition. You know, I don't think it matters if there are amazing schools all over this county, especially for the districts serving you know, individuals living in poverty. But you know, that a child is showing up to school ready to learn, right, that there's no issue with their means of housing, and their stomachs are full, right? It's part of the ingredient, and I think it would hopefully have a significant impact on the number of cases I'd see. It's very odd, but I think my overall goal is to get to a place where the county doesn't need a public defender's office anymore, right? Because we're not seeing these numbers of cases, or I have to make the very unfortunate call to have to reduce the size of my staff because we're not facing the same types of issues that we are. So, you know, if there is a magic bullet, well, I wouldn't say there's a magic bullet. If really leaning in on funding in those three areas, and you know, really being open to housing, right? When you talk about housing projects for the poor, the working poor, etc., you know, people came out in droves to say that they were for housing, but not, you know, in its location, right, that it was proposed. So, education, housing, and kind of the backbone resources, nutrition, food, etc.
I think that's a great point. By the time people are entering the criminal justice system, it's too late. The early intervention is so key. If people have what they need, they're not, nobody. I want to say that the percentage of people who commit crimes because they're just bad to the core and they just really want to be, bad like that. I think that number and that percentage is so small. I think most people end up in that situation out of desperation. I was working with an unhoused individual who was like, I had to steal something from Target because I'm starving. I'm literally starving. And I don't want to have to do that, but I'm starving. And your heart just breaks by the time. I mean, thankfully, the folks at Target were just said, hey, you can't do that here. They let him go ahead and take the food, which I appreciate. But on the other hand, why are we living in the richest county in almost the world and somebody is having to steal, like, a chocolate milk so that they don't pass out, so that they can live? That, to me, we want to get it to the point where we're taking care of people before they get to those places where they're committing crimes to live or to support their families. That, to me, is that is a goal. So I appreciate that statement. Ida, I'm passing that question to
Absolutely.
you. You
Yeah,
get the
I
last
appreciate
word.
that. Yeah, I was just thinking as you raised that question, I really wish that, the benzos and all those wealthy people, I wish I knew them personally, right? Because we could surely, I could convince them to share that money with some causes. So if I had the unlimited resources, I would put it towards organizations that's already trying to do the work.
Okay.
They're already trying to do the work, and a lot of them are nonprofits, and they do it for the love of what it is that whatever space they're in. So the Hannah Project and the Bridge the Gaps, they're doing it because they want to see education equity, across the board. Our food banks are, and thank goodness for extra food and places like that for these supermarkets where the dates on the food, it's not at its use by date. It's not completely expired, but they're given the food. And so for me, it would be putting the money towards folks who are already doing the work. And then housing. Yes, we have folks, there's an organization, a new startup here in Marin City called Hope Housing. And she is working diligently to purchase a home that she can use for transitional, for young folks who, they will not get an opportunity to have a home or to even leave their parents' home. And so for me, it would go towards people who are doing the work. Yes.
Thank you. Beautifully put. And I think a great way to end our comment. We mentioned a lot of community organizations. We always encourage people to not just take in information. We want people to take action. So in the email, if you've registered for this event, we will provide a list of the resources that have been mentioned in this conversation so that you can support those organizations. I know maybe we can get Jeff Bezos to watch this program and support these organizations, but we can do our part at the very least, and support these organizations that are really doing amazing work in our communities. And I'm going to throw into our chat right now the links to several different programs that were mentioned in here, but there will be more in the email and on our YouTube video and the details of our YouTube video as that gets published. I want to remind you that we're going to have our next program in a few months. The date has not yet been set for that, but that's going to be on the human cost of poverty. We're hoping to have people who will be able to speak to how poverty takes a mental toll on people's mental health, on people's physical health, on their well-being, and how that impacts our larger community in Marin. So please do keep an eye out for that event when it happens, and we will be sure to produce that for you and have that available for you soon. So do stay tuned. I mentioned the book and the book list that we have available. Please do check that out. Check out SURJ Marin if you want to get involved. Explore the Indigenous Healing Center. I know we talked about how Indigenous communities are one of those communities that are massively impacted by poverty, by these systems of poverty. The Indigenous Healing Center is working to help support families that are struggling with health resources, some of that mental health and physical health component. So do check them out. That link is there. And I want to thank certain folks who have helped make this program possible. My thanks to the Friends of the Marin County Free Library. They have provided funds for these programs because they have a passion for educating the broader community of Marin about these very, very important issues, especially as we head into an election cycle. We want people to be educated about the issues. And so this is our way of doing that. I want to say a big thanks to the SURJ Marin donors and partners. Your support of these programs allow us to continue to keep that conversation going and to keep educating the people who live in this community. And I just want to thank our speakers for today, Ida Times Green, David J. Sutton. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you sharing your time with us and your expertise. I think Barbara and Chelsea and Lisa would love to stick on with you and just chat with you really quick, debrief. But for everyone else, thank you for joining us. It was a
Thank you
pleasure
so
to
much.
be with you today.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you for the time. I so appreciate it. I just want to give notice to David's art in the back there. Your California poppies.
That is done by a true artist. I know.
my 7-year-old daughter.
There you go.
And that's what it's all about, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. And thank you again to David and Ida. You guys take care.
Yes.